This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, rostering and timesheets without the usual chaos.
There's no better feeling than the feeling of the dining room full and it's buzzing, and you just know, like, there's something about it and you can just feel it. And that feeling is just the best feeling in the world. I've never found anything that can recreate it.
This is the Luminaries on the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Sydney and Melbourne have long been considered the culinary capitals of Australia, but the evolution of dining has seen the other capitals blossom in their own right over the last decade or so. Canberra has long been considered a plain place where politicians come to play, but that has changed thanks to a band of savvy young operators. The new wave of Australian dining is no more prevalent anywhere than in the nation's capital, where young operators are not only taking Canberra on a new journey, but are part of the new food conversation in food right across Australia right now. Ross McQuinn is a co-owner of Pilot in Ainslie in the ACT. Ross, how are you?
I'm good, Huck. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you on the show. You've been a part of this incredible new wave of young operators changing the conversation in food. What's it been like doing that in Canberra?
I suppose I feel a bit self-conscious you saying it like that. I just always wanted to do things that we thought were cool and we thought were missing, and kind of opened a venue that we wanted to go to ourselves. But I think doing it in Canberra has been one of the kind of greatest experiences ever. I think the community down here is really lovely, and, you know, it's just such a tight-knit, supportive community where we can all kind of talk to each other. You know, I'm on the phone with other restaurateurs 5-6 times a week, and one of my absolute favourite memories was when the Good Food Awards in Brisbane a couple of years ago, we all booked a table together at Gerard's Bistro. So it was XO, it was Aubergine, it was Pilot, Temperata, Morks, Rockford came a little bit later, but, you know, it was kind of, we're all there together. And I think that's kind of a reflection on the tight-knit nature of Canberra, which is really lovely to be a part of.
There have been great restaurants in Canberra in the past, but there is a new wave going on in Canberra. What was it like when you first sort of started? Were there challenges bringing this kind of new way of dining to the capital?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went through a pretty tough year and a half. Very early on, there were some serious challenges. You know, we weren't busy, and the restaurant wasn't making money. In fact, it was losing money, and we kind of just had to hold on to this idea of we believed in what we were doing. And it got really, really dark at some point. You know, there were times that we were questioning, have we made the right choice? You know, should we have opened something that was a little bit more approachable? You know, we love being in the suburbs now, but, you know, at the time it was, oh God, we don't get any foot traffic. You know, there were some really dark times, but luckily we've kind of made it through.
Well, you mentioned you're in the suburbs, and it really is quite hidden unless you know where those Ainslie shops are. Tell us a bit about the site and the area and why you chose that.
There's kind of a funny story about that. Well, I've always loved the Ainsley Shops. I really have. I think it's such a beautiful area. It's close to the city, but not sort of right in the city. It's actually, someone told me the other day, it's got such history. Someone told me that it was the oldest suburban shops in Canberra. So obviously there was like Civic beforehand, but yeah, it's the oldest suburban shop. So there's a lot of history there. People love to tell us that there was a brothel upstairs many years ago when they come in to dine. But no, I actually helped Gus Armstrong, who owns 86. I helped him take on the site in 2017, and he took it on as Pulp Kitchen, which it had been there for many years. And he sort of tried to modernize Pulp Kitchen. And I very promptly, about 3 weeks later after it opened, got fired. But a year after that, he decided that he didn't like having two restaurants. So Dash, my partner in life and business, and Mal, our business partner, were kind of looking for sites at the moment. And I got a very random phone call one morning saying, hey, do you guys want the Pulp site? And so it kind of felt a little bit natural and kind of coming full circle. And, you know, we kind of knew the site as well. So it felt like a good entrance into owning a business.
Every success has its failures. You just mentioned the site that you have now for Pilot you were fired from. What happened?
I think opening a new venue is hard for anyone, even someone that had done it before and as successfully as 86. And there were definitely challenges that I know that we went through, and I think that Gus just wanted a change. You know, very immediately he just felt that it wasn't quite working. But you know, it's one of those things. There's no resentment or no hard feelings, because I then know a year and a half later we were going through almost the same thing. You know, struggling with questioning ourselves, I suppose.
You had many challenges in that first year and a half, but you've won so many national accolades and had so much recognition in its short history, and the impact has been incredible. Tell us about what the idea of the restaurant was when you first opened.
I suppose when we first opened, we kind of looked at restaurants that we really, truly loved, and there are some of them in Canberra, don't get me wrong, but there was this style of dining, kind of dining and service and everything all put together, that we felt there wasn't enough representation of in Canberra. And we took a lot of inspiration from venues in Sydney and Melbourne, and we kind of looked at that and thought, where do we want to go to eat? And let's try and amalgamate all of our experience and all of our kind of desires and all of our things that we think make a restaurant great, and let's try and do that. You know, I'd be lying if I said that we weren't, you know, aiming to be at the pointy end of the spectrum and kind of, you know, be as premium as we could. And it sort of just, it sort of just came out of that. I think, funnily enough, ironically enough, we ended up diluting it a little bit because of a lack of confidence, you know, not having the strength and the fortitude to kind of go, well, no, this is exactly what we want to do. Being first-time restaurateurs and being young and being out in the suburbs. And then I think, funnily enough, COVID actually gave us a really good chance to kind of reset and look at what we truly wanted to do and adapt our business model into something that we're now even more proud of. Not that I wasn't proud of the restaurant before, but I'm even more so now.
Well, I want to explore those changes shortly, but take us back to when you were young. Where did the interest in food start for you?
I thought you might ask something like this, and I was kind of chatting. I was chatting to my mother, and she will listen to this, and she'll hate this. Well, no, she won't, because she knows. No one in my family really, except for my uncle, was a very accomplished cook. They were all pretty horrible, to be honest. But there was always a sense of community around food. You know, we always went to the local teppanyaki restaurant with my childhood friends for every single birthday, and there was something really lovely about that. You know, we would spend, you know, nights playing board games and having food around the dinner table. And I remember vividly, actually, even beyond that, not just community. I remember how special I felt the first time I went to a nice restaurant, and I still remember it. It was Icebergs when I was about 8 years old for one of my dad's business meetings. And I remember the waiter gave me a little bit of gold leaf because I was so stunned that I was eating gold leaf pudding. And so he got a little Tupperware container and he gave me a tiny sheet. And now thinking back on it, it's worth 25 cents or something. But at the time I was so blown away and I felt so special. And it's kind of moments like that that I think inspired that love of that experience and that sort of, because for a long time I wouldn't have guessed that I was going to end up in hospitality. I went to university and I studied commerce and law and kind of were looking at jobs for that sort of process. And I ended up, I hated the grad application process so much that I ended up working full-time at 86 in Braddon. And it was kind of during that year that I realized, wait, I love this. Why wouldn't I keep doing this?
Tell us a bit about your hospitality career early on, the sort of key moments that sort of changed you.
I was working in catering while at university, just kind of like a standard university gig to sort of make some money and kill some time. And I actually remember being introduced to the bar manager at Hippo, which is a cocktail bar in Canberra. And I got asked why was I wasting my time doing something shit, basically. And I kind of didn't really have an answer. So the next day I walked into Hippo and I had a job there. And, I started to look at bartending and, kind of take that a little bit more seriously and actually work to make drinks. And I met some friends who I still, some of my closest friends today, which, I'm always grateful for. And it was sort of 2 to 3 years of kind of doing that. And then I went into 86 and I was kind of sick of working until 5, 6 in the morning. And I was chatting to the manager there and they said, well, why don't you work in restaurants? And kind of the penny dropped a little bit. And I absolutely adored working at 86. I thought it was a great venue. And, this was right after it first opened. And if we're talking about places that kind of changed the culture in Canberra, like I truly believe that 86 was a really ahead of its time at the time and kind of definitely changed how people looked at food and dining in Canberra. Even simple things like sitting times, which no one in Canberra had any knowledge of, and that was fun sort of trying to break that to them. So yeah, I think 86 was where I learned kind of a lot. And after I was fired from Pulp Kitchen, I kind of looked to go to Sydney or Melbourne. Dash had moved to Sydney and was planning to work at Momofuku, and I kind of wanted to follow suit and kind of work at somewhere that I thought was really premium. And but I then got an offer to make gin and vodka for Underground Spirits, which was a lot of fun and kind of, it was definitely using a different part of my brain. And the other great thing about that was it gave me time to focus on opening a new venue, because it was during that period that I realized, and I'd spoken with Mel and I'd spoken with Dash, and I said, you know what, we have to do something, let's do something. And I sort of had a kind of 3-year plan. And then I think it was about 2 years after that, we opened Pilot. And Underground Spirits was great because I got to make gin in the morning and kind of plan the business at night. And it was awesome.
You mentioned your commerce and law degree. Has that come in handy being a restaurateur?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that works quite well with how we've got everything set up is there is a little bit of separation of powers. I think Mal is a very talented chef, and while I've spent time in kitchens and have cooked a little bit commercially, I would absolutely by no means call myself an accomplished chef. And I think that obviously I'm biased, but I think that Dash is just the best restaurant manager that I know. I think she's fantastic at that. And it means that I get to kind of focus on the back of house, and, you know, we don't have to employ an accountant every single week. You know, we just go to them for the kind of bigger things, or when we're looking to expand, or, you know, spend on assets and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of got a really nice separation of powers where we've all got strengths, and, you know, we kind of all work off that, which I think works pretty well.
What's been the key to that sort of back area that you look after? A lot of the thought in hospitality over its history is about turnover being king and as many people in as possible rather than margins. What sort of approach have you done in regards to getting on top of the business like that?
I mean, we've kind of generally taken a quite an analytical approach. For example, when we opened with an a la carte menu and we called it at the time a prefix or a set menu. And when we shut down after the first lockdown in March 2020, because I'd kept kind of statistics of absolutely everything kind of week on week and month on month, you know, I remember looking at it and working out, I can't remember the exact number now, but I think it was about 83 or 85% of our customers were doing the set menu. And it just became a no-brainer to go, well, we've always wanted to be a degustation-only restaurant. You know, 85% of our customers are choosing the set menu. Why wouldn't we do that? So I think it's, that kind of back of house thing. I've always taken an approach of keeping a track of everything and keeping records of everything, because information is never a bad thing. You know, you can always use it in some way, shape or other. So kind of having that information at your fingertips is always useful. It also, I think, sorry, I just thought of something else. I think that having your eyes on everything and on that aspect of your business, it's scary at times, you know, when it's not doing well, but it gives me an appreciation and a full understanding for how it's going, because I've been a part of businesses where people just sort of give invoices to accountants and don't really have any vague idea on how they're actually going. They kind of just go, oh yeah, we're full, it's fine. But there's so much within that you can change. You know, you can change your margins, you can change your percentages, you know, you can spread out your tables and charge a little bit more, and it can make a world of difference for a business. And if you don't kind of have a full understanding of that, then it can be difficult.
This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, helping managers and staff do their best work.
Hospitality is all about the connection. A business starts with passion, but gets bogged down with all the complexities that come with life, society, and rules. If we can simplify this mundane, then people can be happy and they can thrive. And when you have happy staff members and happy managers, your customers will sense it. They'll be happy. And you create that connection. That connection is hospitality is about.
For more information, go to deputy.com. You mentioned the challenges early on. Do you have any stories of how challenging and how close you came to closing in the early years?
I think if it was kind of three or four more months, we wouldn't be here now. We've definitely got some stories. So there were. I found it really funny because we started to receive some accolades, which is great, and I'm so thankful and appreciative for. But they always take a little bit of, well, they don't. I mean, they sometimes take a little bit of time to filter in. I remember we got a really great Gourmet Traveller review that was wonderful by David Matthews, and we, you know, woke up and bought the magazine, and I was so stoked and really appreciative. And that night we had one table of two booked, and they ended up cancelling, and so we blocked off bookings, and we cooked up a chicken, and we sat there and we ate roast chicken, and we drank Roddenbachs, which have now become the symbol of when something's going wrong at the restaurant. So the night of lockdown, it was more Roddenbachs, and then we had an electrical fire and we had to shut. Maybe 6 months ago, and there was another round of Roddenbachs. So they've kind of become the symbol of things not going well.
What was the turning point for Pilot to change from those sort of scary early days to becoming a successful restaurant?
In all honesty, it was that kind of first award season. You know, we were really, really lucky to be nominated for Best New Restaurant by both Gourmet Traveller and Good Food. You know, you yourself, Huck, gave us a really great write-up, and there was a national list in which we did really well, and John Leflane put us in his Hot 50. And they were all really, really great, but it kind of brings up a broader point that it felt really bittersweet to me, because I was so appreciative and I was so stoked. And these are these publications that I've looked up to for my entire career, and, you know, always respected. And it was great because we then started to see this business turn around, and we started to feel that we could actually be onto something, and it was great. But there was a part of me that really hated the fact that it was kind of other people's opinions in this kind of small insular group that really actually defined whether we did well or not. And that really, it kind of felt a little bit weird, honestly. You know, I remember there were customers that came in early on. I actually remember this one specifically. There was one customer that we'd served constantly, you know, Dash and I both, over our years at 86, and they came in really early on, and I got a really condescending talking to of, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? You know, I really think you're not doing the right thing, and, you know, I just, you know, I'm concerned about you." And we kind of went, like, look, we believe in this, and we're throwing our hats behind it, and I'd rather do this and fail than do something I'm not proud of and succeed. And we got a phone call saying like how they were just worried and they thought it was pretty bad, and et cetera, et cetera. And about a week after we got a Good Food hat, the same customers came in and had brought some friends and were telling their friends how much they've always supported Dash and Ross and how they've loved it, and they knew that they'd be successful. And it kind of crystallized for me that some people are really guided in their opinions by these sorts of publications, and it becomes a little bit, you know, it becomes a little bit sort of unnerving as a restaurateur to realize how much power these sorts of publications can have on the opinions of people on your business.
You mentioned that COVID was an opportunity to reflect and look at the business differently and change what you wanted to offer. Tell us about how much it changed and what sort of impact it had.
Well, firstly, we decided to lean into being as premium as we'd always wanted to be. We had always wanted to do degustation only because that's sort of our favorite style of dining, and that's how we feel we can create a restaurant that represents us best because, well, for a number of reasons. You know, you waste as little food as possible. You know, you get to control how people order and kind of in what order, and you get to control a menu that flows nicely. You can also decrease the amount of people that are in the restaurant, so you can focus on everyone a little bit more because the head spend's naturally higher. And COVID gave us a chance to do that. You know, we took tables out of the dining room and we spread it all out, and we switched from an a la carte offering that had a set menu to degustation only, and we made it all individually plated as opposed to share plates, and we added, you know, little things like tea at the start of the meal, and we give away petit fours at the end, and kind of those sorts of things. So it allowed us to do the restaurant I think secretly we'd always wanted to do, but maybe for a lack of confidence, and maybe, you know, maybe it wouldn't have worked when we first opened, and maybe we needed to sort of go through a year of kind of building a little bit of trust with the community. But I think now we're doing the restaurant that we always wanted to do, which is great.
What sort of impact has this restructuring had on your margins and also the connections with the staff as well?
It's allowed us to employ predominantly permanent staff. So most of our casual staff, we gave the offer of converting to permanent part-time so they can have, you know, sick leave and holidays and all of that sort of thing, we were able to employ more full-time staff members, both on the front of house and in the kitchen, which I think is great because it gives a little bit of job security and, you know, some consistency there. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to try and be embarrassed about this, but it has led to us doing better financially as well. You know, the costs are far better controlled, and we can anticipate what is going to happen in a much, much more definitive way, so we can plan it much better. You know, for example, I used to walk into the cool room on a Sunday afternoon, and when we did a la carte, and there'd be hundreds, if not, you know, $1,000 a week worth of stock in there that we weren't going to serve to customers because then we wouldn't open until the Wednesday. And it's stuff that we can take home, or we can give to staff, or we can put in staff meal, which is fine, but it's also money down the drain. And then nowadays I walk into the cool room at the end of the week and there's barely anything there. You know, there's stuff that we want to be there, but there's nothing, no wastage, which is fantastic.
Long before Pilot, you realised that you wanted to create a business with Malcolm and Dash. Malcolm Hanslow is an amazing young cook. Tell us a bit about his food and why you felt something would work there.
I always felt that Mal had a voice with his cooking. You know, it was never trying to be anything that it was not. It was never confused. It was always quite clear and defined. We worked with Mal at 86. It kind of all comes back to that, I suppose. And then Mal spent a long time in Sydney working at some brilliant restaurants that are constant inspiration for us in Esther, Automata, and Oscillate Wildly. And he came back down to Canberra and did a couple of pop-ups, one at Bar Rockford and one at Barrio, and he helped myself and two friends that we were kind of doing a series of food pop-ups as well during that time, and kind of focusing on nose to tail cooking, and Mal sort of helped us out with that for a couple of events. And you always just felt that he knew exactly how he wanted to cook and the sort of food that he wanted to cook. There was kind of no confusion, and it's a lot of it is such simple ideas, and they look so simple on the plate, but I know that there's a lot of work that kind of goes into them, and that's kind of the style of food that I really like anyway. And so when Dash and I originally spoke about doing a restaurant, there was no question who we were going to ask to be a chef, and it was only a matter of convincing Mal to come back to Canberra, which I am very grateful we managed to do.
Pilot's had an incredible impact and success so far. What sort of impact has Pilot had on you personally?
I mean, everything. It's been a catalyst for growth. It's kind of, you know, helped me understand how to tackle problems. You know, it's made me grow up a lot, you know, probably a lot quicker than I would have if I didn't have it. You know, I've kind of in the past known to be sort of like hot-headed and a little bit emotional, and kind of when you've got everything on the line and when you kind of see it potentially going down, you've kind of really got to sort out your emotions pretty quickly, because the only two options are to get overly emotional and kind of stick your head in the sand and sort of cry about it, or get over it and do something about it. And, you know, we thankfully chose the latter. You know, I really hope, like I always feel like I end up learning a lot more than I kind of teach a lot. I think it's been something that has been really inspiring, because I always believe in sort of inspiring, in surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, because I'm not perfect at everything. And in fact, some would argue I'm not perfect at anything, but I, you know, kind of hopefully can surround myself with people that can do a job to a higher standard so that I can learn from them as well, which has been yeah, it's been great. It has been really great.
You've been an integral part of this new wave and evolution of Canberra's dining scene. What do you think about it? What is it? What do you think that makes it so great?
I think I think it is the community. I think it's the fact that we, most people in Canberra at one stage or another have worked with each other. Even if it's for a day or 2 days, and everyone is so supportive, and that for me is what makes this kind of the whole industry truly great. But in terms of from an actual food and service perspective, I think our closeness to great produce is just such a stunning thing. You drive for 20 minutes in Canberra and you're in an orchard, or you're in, not an orchard, but, you're in a small, lovingly taken care of farm, or, you're in the country with some absolutely great beef, and, we're always looking for new ideas and for new inspirations. And I think people are willing to accept that change. So, for example, like Danny from Barrio set up a company about using retired dairy cows, which we kind of hadn't really seen in Canberra, but it was such a great initiative and was able to be done because we're so close to the farm. So he could drive out to Burra and kind of see all the cows and, have that conversation with the dairy farmers. So, yeah, I think Canberra's a great place. Sorry, I think I rambled a little bit on that question, but yeah.
You've turned Pilot into a really profitable, amazing, successful business, even with the challenges of COVID, with a restaurant that Canberra hadn't seen before. What sort of advice would you give to young operators looking to go out on a limb like you have and find success?
I think that there are two questions that matter, and no matter what, it kind of distills down to these two questions. And the first one is, are you proud of what you do? And that can be anything. It depends on your definition of proud. And I think that encompasses everything, like, giving yourself enough work-life balance and giving your staff a place where they want to come to work, and, giving your customers the sort of service and the sort of food and the sort of experience that you want them to experience. And then I think the second question is the simple one, which is, can you afford to keep doing it? And as long as you can answer yes to those two questions, then I think you're on the right track. And that's the most important thing. Everything else is kind of noise.
What is it that you love about what you do?
It's a challenge every day. It's, never the same. And there's always like that kind of nervousness and frustration. And I still get nervous going to service, which I kind of like. But there's no better feeling than the feeling of the dining room full and it's buzzing, and you just know, like, there's something about it and you can just feel it. And that feeling is just the best feeling in the world. I've never found anything that can recreate it. So yeah, I think that you're kind of chasing that feeling, I suppose, is why I really, really love what I do. And I suppose the other thing is, to be a part of this industry and get to kind of be a part of this industry, which I admire and respect so much. And, I've been very lucky to cross paths with people that I've considered inspirations, and that's just really cool and really great. And I really love it. There's no better feeling than going into someone else's restaurant who you respect and kind of getting this great experience. And so trying to do that for other people is just, the best feeling in the world.
Well, you guys are bloody amazing at delivering that for all of the people that come to Pilot, and we've absolutely loved having you on the Luminaries today to hear your story, Ross. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Huck.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast. or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.